Hey guys, welcome back to the Sal Pitera channel. And once again today, we are going to be talking about Norwegian cruise lines. Yes, they are back in the news. This time, they left a couple stranded in Cuba and left port 2 hours early. So we're going to talk about that when we get back right after this. Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to talk about Norwegian Sky today and what happened this week on the Norwegian that's making them hit the news yet again this week. Before we begin, again, as always, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notification. That way YouTube will let you know when we upload new videos. So today we're going to talk about the Norwegian Sky. Now, just before Thanksgiving, if you watched my videos, you know that there was a dilemma on a Norwegian ship in Puerto Rico where the ship broke down and they had to cancel their cruise right there at one of their first ports of call and fly everybody home. And there was lots of controversy. And I was pretty critical of Norwegian Cruise Line on the way they handled it and the way people had to stay at the airport or at the convention center waiting to get to the airport. Just the whole thing, I was pretty critical of Norwegian. Well, today Norwegian is back in the news with the Norwegian Sky. Now, this time, I'm going to be just the opposite, and I'll let you know a background of what happened. A gentleman named Kevin and his girlfriend were taking their dream cruise aboard the Norwegian Sky, and one of their stops was in Cuba. Now, when they booked the cruise, on the cruise paperwork, their stop in Cuba was supposed to be from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So everything was great. They're really looking forward to their Cuban cruise. Now, let me back up a little bit. When you go to Cuba, you can't just walk off the ship in Cuba. It's not like a normal port. Because of the embargo we had, there are rules for visiting Cuba. One of them is you have to have a legitimate educational purpose for being there. So in order to go to Cuba, in order to get off the cruise ship, you pretty much have to buy a shore excursion. That satisfies their requirement for an educational reason to be there. So Kevin, and I'm leaving out this last name on purpose, Kevin and his girlfriend booked a shore excursion in Cuba, and they went on this all-day excursion. They got back to the ship an hour and a half early at 3:30 p.m. and they got that gut-wrenching feel that I can only imagine they had in their stomachs when they looked at the port and the ship was no longer there. So they had to use their own money and try and find transportation back from Cuba, which I can't imagine is easy, and fly back to home or to the next port of call. I'm not sure which they did, but they had to do it at their own expense. Needless to say, Kevin and his fiancée are very unhappy, and this made the news. And not only are they asking Norwegian back for their complete cruise fare, but they're also asking for Norwegian to take care of their expenses for the transportation back. Now, I was pretty critical of the San Juan incident with Norwegian. For this one, I have to tell you, Kevin and his girlfriend were 100%, in my opinion, in the wrong. How can that be? Well, let me tell you. First of all, Norwegian, and this is coming from Norwegian, by the way, say that first they sent both their travel agent as well as them emails prior to boarding the ship before they left for their vacation, letting them know that the port of call times were changed and that the ship would be leaving at 3 o'clock p.m. So that's the first way they were notified. The second way they were notified, when they got on board the day before the port of call, according to Norwegian, the cruise director made lots of announcements over the ship's intercom speaker, letting people know and reminding them that the port of call in Cuba was going to be changed and you need to be back on board by 1:30 p.m. for a 3 o'clock departure. Now, if you've been on cruises, you know that if you're in your cabin, you might not hear that because usually those announcements are just throughout the common areas of the ship. Norwegian also says they played this announcement on the stateroom televisions as well. So if you're watching TV, it would have taken over the television and you'd have heard that announcement on the TV as well. Also, Norwegian gives you an itinerary for the next day each night prior to your voyage. It's going to tell you about the next day. And for that day's itinerary, it did tell them that the be back on time was 1:30 p.m. Also, when they were leaving the ship, there's a sign on the gangway that says back on board time 1:30 p.m. So, with all of those notifications, I'm here to tell you I really believe that this was not Norwegian's fault, contrary to a lot of the reports you're hearing and seeing online. So here's where Kevin and his girlfriend really got it wrong. First of all, when you go on a cruise, it's your obligation to make sure that you know what time to be back on that ship. You can't just take it for granted that when you book the cruise, that time is automatic and it's going to stay that time. A ship, depending on seas and what the weather forecast is, may need extra time to get from port to port. So they do frequently change your port times depending on those conditions from what you might have purchased when you bought the cruise initially. So every time you leave that ship, regardless of whether or not you've heard announcements, regardless of whether or not you see it on your travel itinerary that they give you for that day, the last thing I do whenever I leave that ship, when you're checking out through security, is I ask them, what is the back on board time? Now, Kevin and his girlfriend were given lots and lots of opportunities to know what that back on board time is by simply asking or reading the itinerary, which, by the way, they admit they had. He just admitted it had been in his pocket and he hadn't read it until after they already missed the ship. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you have that back on board time so that you know when that ship is going to be leaving. Next, Kevin and his girlfriend bought a shore excursion, but they did not purchase their shore excursion through the cruise line. I cannot tell you enough, especially if you're a new cruiser, never buy a shore excursion from an outside company, not through the cruise line. Had they bought that shore excursion through the cruise ship and it would have arrived late, that ship would have been there waiting for them. But that is absolutely one of the chances that you take if you buy your excursion from somebody else other than the cruise line. Even if your ship leaves on time and the time you thought they were going to leave. If you don't buy your shore excursion through the cruise line, the bus taking your excursion could get a flat tire on the way back. Something could cause you to be late to miss that ship. And if you didn't purchase it through the cruise line, like Kevin and his girlfriend, you'll be waving goodbye to that ship or standing on the pier and the ship's totally gone. So let me know what you think about this situation. That's pretty much where I stand. While I feel bad for Kevin and his girlfriend, really, they had lots of opportunities to know what time to be back on that ship. And really, they should have done it themselves. But I want to know what you think. Let me know down in the comments down below. Once again, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notification, and I'll see you on your next vacation.